University webinar. Super excited for this one. We got Michaela Halliwell here. We're going to be talking all about API product management. As always, please let us know that you're out there. Give us a chat, a message, a hello, and where you're joining us from. So I know that I'm not just like talking to the screen. There we go. Hey, Favor, I knew I could count on you. So look at, we already got Oman, Argentina, Portugal, Romania. Check it out, Michaela. Like we're all over the
Global.
world. Manchester from this is fabulous. Thank you all for joining. We just love doing these sessions, and today's session is going to be super cool. We're talking all about API product management, and we're even launching a new course today, which I'll tell you all about in just a little bit. But let me introduce our guest. Michaela is probably like the most experienced API products person I've met. Just like all the places you've been and all the things you've done, and I quote unquote discovered you on LinkedIn when you published some really cool stuff, which we'll share here as well. But welcome, Michaela. It's so nice to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And let me give you a little bit of let me give everyone a little bit of your background. So you run API platforms at HCSS.
That's correct.
And HCSS is, there's an interesting story right there. So HCSS, I mean, give us a little bit of background. It's a construction company and that kind of.
Yeah, so we're a tech company. We serve the heavy civil construction industry. And so heavy civil, when we talk about construction and heavy civil, we're not talking apartment buildings. We're not talking townhomes or houses or skyscrapers. We're talking horizontal construction. So pipelines, bridges, roads, infrastructure. So everything that goes this way, not this way.
Well,
Those are our customers.
And when I learned about that, like I was like, wait a minute. APIs, like what does APIs have to do with pipelines and bridges, and what
Everything.
does it have to do?
Everything. So I mean, think about a construction site if you're hovering above it like a drone, right? You've got equipment out there. You've got small tools tracking. You've got people checking in and out. You've got trucks coming in and out. You've got pipelines. You've got the daily operations. You've got, even before you're out there on the job, you've got estimates and bidding on the job. So from your operations, your estimating, your fleet, your tools, your dispatching, all of those are data points.
Yeah.
And when you're an HCSS customer, we're very much data first. And so every interaction you have on your job site, pre-job site, post-job site, when you're looking at, was I under budget? Was I over budget? What did this foreman do that this foreman doesn't do? How many trucks am I missing over here? All of these questions can be answered by APIs. And so all of those data points come into our system constantly throughout the day for our different customers. And they're able to use the tools and products that we've used with APIs, with Power BI reporting, with different data integration studio services that we've built in order to gain answers to the questions that they have about their operations.
I just envision that this was all being done with like spreadsheets and, clipboards and stuff like that. And maybe that's, why they brought you on board.
That's where we come in. HCSS has been in this business for almost 38 years now, I think. So we've been around the block. Customers are definitely the main focus of HCSS, which is one of the reasons I just fell in love with the organization, is that customers come first. And so
I think that's a theme we're going to hear in like the sort of philosophy you bring to API product management. And so it's just so interesting, like in this kind of what we could think like a construction environment, API is still super relevant, right? And before that, I was checking out, you were at Dealerware, a fleet management organization, and API is prevalent there as well.
Not as much, but still, I mean, very, very much integration focused, and not as much API first as other organizations I've been at, but definitely heavy on the integration with different OEMs. I think that with the construction industry and the automotive industry, you almost find them a little bit behind the times, similar to the medical industry, not so much as maybe some of us in fintech or telco are used to, just being very much ahead of the cut. A lot of these industries are still playing catch up almost when it comes to APIs. And so the need for API product management or API thought leadership is very important in organizations and industries like that.
Well, it's so true, and it feels like the evolution, right? API has been around for a while, right?
Yeah,
API product managers are still kind of new,
very much.
and I feel like you stepped in as a thought leader into this space, which is like, all right, it's taken a while for people or organizations to realize we actually need this role, and that's definitely something I want us to elaborate on here. But let me just share a little bit with everybody. So first of all, a little sneak peek. We'll go back to this at the end of the session, but we got a brand new course, API product management, no less, course on AppySec U. So I'll tell you more about that at the end. But go check it out. But this is where I met or what got me to reach out to Michaela. You published this article that is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right. Am I back? No?
There you go. Can
Am
hear
I
you.
back? Oh, Jesus. I have no clue what just happened there. We're gonna have to edit that all out from the YouTube. Um, that's so weird. I don't know, mysteries of the internet. But at any rate, this is like a seriously like deep piece of research here. So Michaela, what inspired you to create this?
I would say probably just more of a get it out of my head onto paper kind of thing, more for myself, really. But I know that there are other people out there walking the same path. And for me, I've been an API product manager before and I didn't write it down. And so this time around, I was kind of going back through a year's worth of notes and meeting notes and saying, what did I ask the last time that was useful? What do I need to know? At what point did I ask this question when I should have asked it earlier? And so gathering all these things more for myself, really, and then realizing I could share this with other people because it was useful for me to have it. So why not useful and multiply the wins across the industry?
No, it's really I highly recommend this. If this is a topic of interest to folks, definitely come check it out. There's this graphic that you've got in there that I found funny and probably very, very real and
I
honest.
should
But
start a meme account.
yeah, you should, right? And this is I think this is just like the kind of conveys the herding cats notion of the multiple hats, all of that, right? So
Yeah.
let's start with the basics. Okay, what is API product management and how is it different than regular product management?
Yeah. So what is regular product management, right? Product management or a product manager is a person responsible. If you subscribe to the School of Marty Kagan, which he literally wrote the books on product management, if you subscribe to that, a product manager is the person responsible for discovering, delivering a product that is valuable, so it meets customer needs. It's usable, right? So there's good UX, there's a good user experience behind it, and it's feasible, so it can be built effectively.
Yeah.
And so a product manager balances those business objectives with the customer satisfaction, along with the technical capabilities that are woven throughout. So they're going to work closely with design. They're going to work with engineering, with marketing, with sales, with leadership. They're going to touch every person in the organization. And the entire purpose of that is to make sure that their product is executed and delivers a real impact down the line. So that's a product manager. So an API product manager is just a product manager whose product is an API. And APIs are not products unless you productize them. They are utilities in the back end until you productize them. I have been at organizations where they are just utilities, where they are meant to run in the background and they're not part of the overall business strategy until it's too late.
Yeah.
So an API product manager is deeply focused on the APIs, making sure that no matter who the end users are, whether they're partners, internal teams, customers, that your APIs are integrating well with other systems, that the internal teams that rely on them to make strategic decisions are humming, and that the customer's needs are met, and that are the customer's needs are what are guiding the product strategy, the API product strategy.
Well, and so like I've noticed, right, when I look at, I work with a lot of organizations, right, and some get it, right, like we got to treat APIs as products, and others it's just that stuff. It's just an interface, right? We don't treat our UI as a product. It's just the front end, right? And so like, why is that not true? Why are APIs products, right? Isn't it just like, an interface?
Depends on the strategy that you take. I think that unless you productize it, nothing's going to be a product, right? You have to adopt a product management state of mind. But any product worth their salt nowadays has APIs, right?
Yeah.
In recent years, what is it? I think Salesforce has come out and said that half of its revenue, which think about how many organizations in the world have Salesforce, half of their revenue is due to APIs. eBay, I think it's 60%, and Expedia, it's 90%.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So APIs are often thought of as just technical, or you've even heard in the API community, they're just utilities. That's because until you productize them and take the user's consideration, the customer consideration into the picture, they are just backend. But I think that every organization that needs APIs to be successful is going to need product management or a developer, head of developer experience. Someone's got to be leading the charge on what is our API product strategy.
Well, we'll talk about like what does it take to be an API product manager, but like we have a lot of folks on this session, right? And if they were going to go back to their organization and make the case for why there should be a role called API product manager, right? Like what's the argument there, or what's being missed by not doing this?
Well, I think that if you're trying to scale your organization, you need an API product management or API strategy. APIs are going to allow you to scale. They're going to allow you to reach new markets through partnerships and marketplaces, building an ecosystem. They're going to create additional streams of revenue, which, I mean, everybody loves money, right? So why wouldn't we want to do that? But you're going to need a roadmap to do that. You're going to need a standard, a quality standard for your APIs. And that's where API PMs come in. Without that role, you're in maintenance mode, right? You have no larger goal, which that means risks. That means missed opportunities. And so an API PM is going to be able to align the technical capabilities with the overall business objective to grow, to scale, to integrate, to broaden, extend the functionality of the products. So it's not just a functional thing, but they're true assets to building your business.
Well, I see this here from Sebastian. Thanks for jumping in and breaking the ice here, right? So could APIs be considered more like a capability than an end user? And, building on that, like, it seems to me like there's a fundamental, like, philosophical thing here, which is like, as an organization, do we think APIs are strategic or not?
Exactly.
Right. And if you think, and I was reading some article recently, maybe it was yours, which was like, you want to meet your customers where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're saying like, all right, where you need to use our product is in our application and on our domain and in our world, well then you're eliminating all kinds of other venues for customers to take advantage of what you offer, right? So I don't know, what's your take here on Sebastian's comment and the notion of APIs being strategic or not?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, could APIs be considered more like a capability product than an end user product? Maybe I don't know the difference between those two, because an end user product, you're building capabilities for your end user, right? So I mean, it's just the train you take in order to get the end result. And APIs can deliver that. Reporting can deliver that. The UX can deliver that. So I don't know if I would split the hairs that much. But yes, APIs can be just utilities, but it's more about the strategy that your organization takes as a whole.
Well, and in reading your blog, you put a lot of emphasis on what the customer needs, right? Capital NEED, right? Like, what is the customer's need, right? So, what is what does a good API look like from a customer perspective? 'Cause I mean, I think a lot of people think like, hey, I got an API, it does the things it needs to do. I have a Swagger file, you can go look it up. Like, what's the difference between doing APIs well and really serving the needs of that end user?
In the API world, we like to use the analogy of the developer portal being akin to a menu, right? And APIs in the restaurant, and the API is the server. We've seen this analogy all over the place, right? But I like to take it one step further and saying it's not enough to just deliver an API. In fact, that's the bare minimum. If anybody on here, you like to cook, and I tell you to go make steak au poivre for me, but I don't give you the recipe, and you don't know how to make steak au poivre, or I just throw a bunch of ingredients at you. I mean, maybe you could guess on how to piece it together, but there's no order.
Right.
There's no instructions on how to preheat things. There's no do I bake this? Do I braise it? Do I poach it? Do I roast it? There's no rhyme or reason. So you can have an API, but unless it's consumable, we talk a lot about API consumption in the community, right? Unless you are able to ingest it, unless you are able to follow a recipe and be able to deliver on the use case for the customer, I would almost say the API even isn't the product, it's the documentation, or it's the application that you give to use it. Like Boomi is a great API product, right? It's how the end user can consume the API. And so at HCSS, we have a heavy emphasis on our documentation. And so use case guides, recipes, it's not enough just to say, here is the endpoint. Here's the HTTP method. Now go make a call. Okay, I might be able to get a simple get or put from that, but am I able to put together this entire use case that I'm needing to do to accomplish this one thing that eliminates double entry, that makes my workflow go faster, that gets me the data in real time? Am I able to do those type of things? And so I would almost say that there needs to be a heavier focus on the usability and the consumption of the API. And that's very much where a product manager can come in, because if you're talking with your customers about what they need, you're going to be able to understand how to instruct them to use and build this and to go cook, essentially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've just launched this new product, and we spend a lot of time meeting with folks and learning, like, is this intuitive? What would make it better? Like, it's no different for APIs, except, the interface isn't something visual. It's a command line. And you mentioned Boomi's API. There are definitely some that are kind of famous out there for having really great APIs, right? I think
100%. Google's another example of that. I mean, the mapping APIs were not built for rideshare, but because they have someone over there in charge of API strategy, and they future-proofed and been able to evolve their API products. Now you have rideshare and I mean, how many apps do you pull up that you can say launch with Google Maps integrated into their application? I mean, these cycles that developers were able to follow is because someone over at Google was thinking and iterating on their products and responding to the market.
Well, and it's amazing. Like there are whole companies that actually are only APIs, right?
Yes.
Like, like especially in fintech, right? Like
Yes.
I was speaking yesterday with chief API officer at Aperture, right? That's the
Right.
thing now, right? Like their
Yeah.
entire business is APIs, right? And it's interesting because like some companies do it really well and some don't. And so like I'm sure you've seen the whole range, right? Crappy APIs all the way to really great ones. And I think like Twilio's famous for their APIs.
Very
Maybe
Stripe.
Stripe, there's another one
Yeah.
that comes up. Like what makes them so good? Like what do we, what do you try to emulate from those, right? That are like these are some really good best practices.
Yeah, user experience is a big one. I mean, I've got a whole nother blog coming out probably this month on why is Stripe the gold standard in API documentation. Why, when you Google what is a good API, is Stripe first or second on the list. Twilio,
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Ease of use, the trust that they've built with the community, the way that they put the developer, or maybe it's not even a developer, but the way they put the user, primarily a developer, first
Yeah.
in how
Yeah.
they've built it. Yeah.
Well, and it seems like they think about not like, hey, do I have an endpoint for X and Y and Z, but what is the use case? Right? Like I was reading actually it was in our course that's just coming out. Like you could have a workflow, right? That works perfectly fine, but it requires the developer to make 5 different API calls, right?
Mhm.
To string all these things together. But really, if you're really thinking about it, you could be like, we could make this really user friendly and mash that up and create a special API that does it all in one call or something like that, right?
100%. You've got webhooks, you've got bulk endpoints where you can upload thousands of records at a time. If you're not listening to your customers, how would you know that they need that in the first place?
Yeah. I see some really cool questions. This one I just want to throw up real quick from Magnus. And we'll get to all of these, by the way. And Akash, we're definitely going to touch on security. I've had problems to convince my org that the API supporting a new product really need to be thought through UX. How to find the arguments. I think it's what we've been talking about here, right? And for Magnus, like doing it well versus doing it poorly, is the difference between getting results and having a flop, isn't it?
Yeah. Show them the difference. And I mean, sometimes people learn the hard way, right? And sometimes people learn a little too late, which is unfortunate. Finding the argument, it may come down to just the business strategy at the organization itself. And I mean, you can make a case for it. I've been at organizations in the past where you make a case for it, and that's the best you can do.
Yeah.
But some orgs don't prioritize it as they would other products. So I would ask, are you at an organization that fully understands the strategic value of your APIs? How focused are they on customer relationships?
Yeah.
Because ultimately you need to listen to your customers. If your customers aren't clamoring for APIs, I mean, go after what they are asking for.
Right.
Um, but a lot of times it is thought of as an afterthought to the core products, which leads to a lot of neglect to the user experience, to the design, and to the CI/CD process, which is unfortunate. But a lot of organizations still don't prioritize APIs, which is why we need more advocates.
Well, and I think maybe like the reason why is they don't appreciate or understand what the opportunity
Right.
comes with APIs. And maybe Magus, that's where it starts. Like this isn't all about like we should have APIs because APIs are cool.
Right.
APIs are strategic. I mean, and to your point, like, are they strategic? And if they are, then make the business case, right? There's got to be a business case behind this.
Are there partners? Are there industry partners, whether strategic or integration partners, similar to you? You have mutual customers that you can extend it's the build versus buy, right? Do you want to build this feature internally, or do you want to go integrate with someone who already has this feature, and you guys work out a partnership agreement to where you have your APIs talk to each other, and their data is pulled into your system, or vice versa. It's bidirectional, and now your mutual customers benefit from that. You can go collect a partnership fee for that. You can go collect a buy integration fee for that, and pad the bottom line. I mean, so make the case that way. Make the case for the stability of the product. Make the case for, I mean, there's a lot of different angles you can take on why the APIs can be valuable for your organization. So, I mean, I don't know specifically what industry you're in or anything like that, but that's where I would start. What ways can you add value to your existing product suite using APIs?
Yeah, and it can really deepen the relationship, right? Like if your customers
Yeah.
are now integrating your product, your service into their operations, right? That's a pretty nice position to be in as a business, right? To be something
Yeah.
that's now like literally in the operational path of that
You want to be the
organization.
center of that ecosystem. Yeah. You want to be the centralized place. People are coming and saying, I can get 12 things here. I
That's
don't
right.
need 12 different products when I can just go to them because they've got all these integrations. The future of application and platform management is all based on integrations.
Well, and I'm gonna toss this up here from Rick, just because it's good segue. So in all you're getting, get an understanding of why. And I was my next thing I wanted to ask you about is like in your blog, in your article, you talk about kind of this like two like actions, right? There's onboarding and orientation, and then there's go on a tour, right? And there's a boatload of detail underneath each one of them, but it all sounds like your first 100 days is kind of like a listening, researching, understanding exercise. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think of product management as very relational, both internally and externally. And so this go on tour is really it serves multiple purposes. One, you're having people put a face to the name. They know who they need to come ask questions to when it comes to APIs. So anybody else that's been handling this, you've created a funnel now that everything flows directly to you. Additionally, you're saying, hey, I'm here to help, but also what questions do you have for me, and then who do I ask questions? So when I want to publish a case study on this customer over here who used our APIs successfully to save $10 million ARR last year, who do I go talk to and tell that story? So that, like I said in my blog, passion begets passion. You enter every room as the person who cares most about APIs at your organization. That is going to catch. And then you've started to create a culture of data first, of API first in everyone. And you've turned everyone into an advocate. So meet as many people as you can. I mean, I think you should be doing that whether you're a PM or not. I mean,
Yeah.
especially in this hybrid environment that everyone has, you have to be proactive about going after and forming those relationships. But yeah, that's what the listening tour.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, this is fabulous. Hey, Lillian, thanks for that, right? You did 100 one-on-ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
There,
easily.
there you go, right? I mean, how do
Easily.
you know what to build without having that? And so I do want to get to security because we are AppSec here. But there was a comment here from Gergana. I hope I pronounced that properly. Splendid article. I couldn't agree more, right? You talk about being a relationship builder, nerd, and business person. I think that kind of talks to this graphic that we got here, right? But what are some of the like personalities? Like, what do you need to be? Like what are all these skills? Like, sounds like, part therapist, part, engineer, part all kinds of stuff, right?
I would make a terrible therapist because I talk too much. What technical depth you need? My background is in education. I was a teacher, so I'm very sage on the stage. It was not even I didn't even major in anything technical. I majored in the language that I speak, which was what I majored in when I was 16. So, you do not need a technical background. You need to be smart, but you need to be a relationship person first and foremost. You need to be able to understand the technical aspects, but I'm not a developer. I'll never play one on TV. And I say all the time, I am the least smart person in most rooms that I am in, because I work primarily with developers and engineering managers and platform experts and folks building with the ability to execute on my half-baked idea, and so no, you do not need to be heavily technical. Should you be able to understand it if it's explained to you? Yeah. Should you have the ability to ask questions and learn? Yes. But I balance that with, you need to be more relational. And so whether that's with your developers, whether that's with your customers, I mean, have advocates. If you're not a super technical person, have the people that your team that you go to and rely on, and give them the props for being able to do the things you can't do. I mean, you're not working in a silo. You're working with a team.
Yeah. And humility, right? From Rick,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
I had a CFO come into a company once, and on his first day, he said, "Please and thank you really, counts for a lot, right? Like just being
Yeah.
empathetic and all that."
My developers, I think I said it to someone yesterday. Someone asked me a question and I explained the basics, and then I tagged in someone else on my team and just said, I'm going to embarrass myself if I try any harder. He's much more better positioned to be able to give you the deep answer on this,
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't pretend you know it all.
Let's pivot here. Akash had asked, like, here, where's your question, Akash? I've lost it now. But what are the security implications of here we go. What are security issues related to APIs? Thanks for the question, Akash. And
There's not any, really.
you don't even have to worry about it, right? Like no one can see
No.
your API, so you don't have to worry about it. Isn't that
No,
right?
no.
If any of you have attended my workshops, you've heard me talk about Duolingo, Peloton, Venmo. Like the APIs weren't even like behind a password or something, right? So there's some really low
Facebook,
hanging
Uber,
fruit.
T-Mobile. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's a quarter of organizations are impacted by API attacks every week.
Yeah.
And it's like a 20% increase year over year in how many API attacks exist within the different sectors, mostly towards cloud-based, but on-prem as well.
Absolutely right. And so honestly, I just went through, you have literally like 70, 80, 90 questions for internal, and then another for 70, 80, 90 for external. So
I'm really giving away the keys to the kingdom there, man.
well, yeah, right. But we appreciate that you like put all this goodness out there for everyone to take advantage of. So please go check out the article, follow Michaela. And I just extracted out of your list, right? Like probably, I don't know, 10-15% of your questions had security relevance here, right? And so like we can't go through all this, right? But like what are some of the things that really you fixate on and really that stand out from a security perspective, or things that get overlooked or engineering teams don't appreciate and are often likely to miss? I don't know, any things that jump out to you?
Yeah. So as a product manager specifically for APIs, this is what keeps us up at night, right? You mentioned it. API security breaches are a significant concern. And so the types of vulnerabilities, whether they're authentication bypasses, unauthorized data access, the OWASP top 10 weaknesses being targeted, a lot of companies struggle to contain incidents, and it's astonishing how many are just unprepared to secure their APIs. And so I consider several different aspects. Some of the first things I ask about are rate limits because that affects our customers.
Yep.
I want to know if we have them at all, what they are, how they compare to our competitors. If they're reasonable, are people asking for those rate limits to be raised, removed? I think about the authentication and authorization mechanisms we have in place. Do we use OAuth? Are we using client secret keys? Are we using JDA? What's the authentication authorization
Yeah.
mechanisms in place to protect us? I think about data encryption. So ensuring that the API is protected from overuse, from abuse, from making sure that the data is encrypted in transit. I think
Yeah.
about error handling. Are we explaining this? Because that's another thing that affects the customer, right? Making sure that the error responses don't leak sensitive information.
Yeah.
Regular
Yeah.
security audits. There's a number of things that you got to consider.
Well, it's it's why EpiSecU exists, right? There's a
Right.
lot to worry about. Error handling is kind of an interesting one, right? Because you have to walk that line between it should be informative, like helpful,
Mhm.
right? But not
Without leaking
revealing.
system information.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, if someone tries to, guess at your input format, you could just say invalid input. You don't have to say we're expecting an 8-digit, integer, right? But
Yeah.
that's the difference between helpful and revealing, right?
Yeah.
What's your take on like gateways, right? Like API gateways. Is this, do you have an opinion there, or like where is it a must have? Is it,
Yeah.
just
It is.
another thing?
No, it's a must have. In my opinion,
Yeah.
I've been at organizations where we didn't have one, and the first thing I did was build one or go get one.
Yeah.
And if you've got so many great ones out there, by getting an API gateway, you're able to check a lot of things, right? It You're able to keep the bad guys out. You're able to keep the good guys in,
Yeah.
prevent escalating damage, mitigate. A lot of it is compliance as well. But you're also, by having this, you're protecting your reputation.
Yeah.
Your customer trust is not eroded because you have these checks and balances in place in order to say our infrastructure is not at risk, your data is not at risk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a must have.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of our like top 10 best practices,
Yeah.
right? And yes, there are like tactical things like you can enforce authentication at the gateway, and you can set policies. I think you can do rate limiting, or at least some
Yep.
level of input validation and stuff like that. But it's also about governance, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
this is how we do it here, right? We're not going to be like this team did it like this and this team did it like that. It's all about having some common
Yeah.
processes.
At HCSS, that's actually what my team it focuses on. So the many different products that we have, the product teams own their own individual product APIs,
Yeah.
whereas we have a centralized API team in charge of governance. And so
Yeah.
managing gateway management and partner management is central to what we do. It's that governance piece that is missing, I think, in a lot
Well,
of organizations.
and let's talk about, because this seems to be really tricky, which is you have a team that's building products, right? Developers, product owners, PMs, engineering managers, ops people. And then you have, in many organizations, a security team, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know how big your company is, but maybe they're separate. In larger organizations, there are almost always two different teams. There's not a lot of, collaboration necessarily. So like, how do you, like, where does the responsibility exist for security? And how do you achieve that? Right. When we're talking about applications, right? I mean, we talk about APIs, but really we're talking about applications here, right? We're not
Mhm.
talking about, network security or, that kind of thing.
Right.
We're talking about an app, right? So where does that security responsibility live?
It's different at different places. Um, I think it comes down to a culture and a mindset, though, because you're not going to care about this if you don't care about APIs. We've heard the term API first a lot in the last couple of years. And API first, for those who don't know, is just an approach to prioritizing APIs in the product development process, right? APIs are designed and built for the front end and back end systems. They're designed first.
Yeah.
And so doing it this way allows you to focus on the functionality, focus on the security. And so these well-documented secured APIs support multiple use cases across your platform, right? So when managed well, these APIs are not only functional, but also secure assets. So
Yeah.
I think it comes down to going on tour, right? Asking these questions, and making sure that depending on the answers, you're reinforcing the need that this is important, and you have these folks across that you're meeting with carry on that
Yeah.
mindset. You are fully empowered as an API PM, or you should be fully empowered to make those decisions.
Well, what I'm
It-
hearing here
you know,
is that security is part of, I mean, in your world as a PM, right? You consider security part of your responsibility, right? Like you have all these questions included in your research, your listening tour, right?
yeah, it 100% is part of the job.
Yeah, and so we talk a lot about like shifting security left, and I think it's especially relevant in APIs because it's really hard to like build this API, throw it into production, and then say, security team, all right, now make sure it's secure, right? You
Yeah.
can't bolt it on, right? Or
No,
have,
no, no, no. No, it
clever
has to be
firewall
part of
rules.
the design from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to, right? And so, but there's often, there's this whole concept, or not concept, but I'm sure there's a spectrum on this, but like developers don't care about security, right? And I'm sure that's true, and it's also completely untrue, right?
I think it's untrue. I think they care.
Yeah, right. But it's a matter of like, but on the other hand, right? We've got major pressure. You got to hit the release dates. You've got to like get the feature, get that bug fixed, right? So like, there's a lot for developers to worry about, right? And security is somewhere on the list, right? But what I like about what you're talking about here is like, we need to like bring security mentality into
Mhm.
the software life cycle, right?
Yeah,
And if people like you, if the PMs out there listening on this call, or future PMs, right, are aware of security, risks and best practices, then you're weaving security into the product itself.
100%. I mean, API data leaks can, if you care about your product, if you care about your organization, if you care about the success of it, you're going to care about security. You've got social engineering attacks every day all over the world. You've got GDPR and CCPA penalties tied to the failure of a lot of organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
T-Mobile had that breach with like 40 million users where their data was leaked.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to care about that? There's API data leaks that are impacting millions of Americans' data and social security numbers, and
Right.
uh, things that can be further exploited out there on the internet due to API attacks. So if you care about your product, you'll secure it.
Yeah. Yeah. And amen to that. And in fact, the Federal Communications Commission just fined Verizon $16 million for subscriber data leak through an API. And what's interesting is in the finding, and this is all, you can look it up online. They didn't just say, all right, you got us $15 million penalty. They also said, and you have to do these things, right?
Mhm.
Among them, like education and training and testing for vulnerabilities and all these kinds of best practices, right? But we know like there's a lot of pressure on businesses, right, to make things and get them out there and sell them, right? And
Sure,
and security doesn't always get the
sure,
same.
but it might be too late if you don't think about it first. It
I
might be
think
too
I
late at
think
some point.
I think you and Rick are saying the exact same thing
Yeah,
right here.
exactly.
I want to ask you a few things. This has been super interesting. I want to talk about authorization because you talk about authentication, right? Like,
Mhm.
are we using OAuth and frankly, like, my God, there's the number of breaches where there's no authentication is truly remarkable. It's not even like good authentication. It's like literally nothing. but authorization's a different beast, right? Like, can user A see user B's data and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? You can't really do control that at a gateway or something like that, right? Like, where does that kind of logic need to get sort of implemented and governed?
Oh, that's a good question. It's very technical depending on how your API is built. Like, can this business unit see this other business unit? Can this user see that? Like, you've
Yeah,
got to build it in at the beginning.
yeah,
And that's why product management and thinking about the design first and foremost, instead of having developers build this and then dumping it out online and saying, okay, we have an API now, go,
yeah,
because then you're going to have to roll a lot of things back. So, I mean, being API first, being data first means you're thinking about these things before you're publishing them. You're testing them with internal teams for years
yeah,
before you're exposing it on the developer portal. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a very technical, that's a rabbit hole question for me. Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough, and you talked about like in the design phase, right? Like, one of the things we would sort of recommend is like make sure security is in the room when you're like sketching at the whiteboard. Now, our security could be like a security, like could be you, right? You are representing the security concerns in addition to all the other things. But like when we're sketching out, how this app's supposed to work, let's make sure security is one of the categories that's being thought about.
Oh yeah, 100%. And not just saying, well, we have a gateway, so we're taken care of.
Or rate limiting, right? Like
Right.
I'm a big advocate for rate limiting,
Same.
but it's not like we're good now. We don't need to worry, right? We got rate
No.
limiting.
No, not at all. It's the bare minimum I think you can do, but
Yeah,
also in the design of how you're writing your APIs, like I mentioned with the error messages, with how you're deprecating. We have this idea of shadow or zombie APIs being a growing number of just leftover APIs out there that are sitting that no one's paying attention to. That
right.
you think about the rise of AI tooling, and you've got pen tests being written by AI by white hat hackers, but
Yeah.
you've got 10 times the amount of black hat hackers. They're going to use the same exact technology in order to expose and find vulnerabilities with your API. And how scary is that?
Well, and you're reminding me of Favor's question here. Thanks for throwing that in there. Like, what emerging thing? I mean, clearly AI is.
Yeah,
It,
audible groans across the room.
yeah, I know. We had
We
to
talk
say it.
about it.
We got this far, 47 minutes before saying AI, but
It's pretty
but it
good.
but it's a fact. Like, AI apps are being exposed through APIs as chatbots and everything else that we do. And there's a whole new like world of threat vectors when we're talking about AI.
Yes.
You got like prompt engineering and data model theft and who knows so we have a whole course on that too, by the way, and more coming. But I do want to sort of wrap up here, and we've said the word testing a few times, and that's near and dear to our hearts here at AppSec. And Danish has this question: during the AppSec testing, should a pen tester give importance to business requirement or the policy set by the organization? Business logic is one of those really tricky things, right? And we tend to think of vulnerabilities like, oh, you have an unpatched database or flavor of Linux or things like that, right? Like I used to work at Qualys and these, Nessus scanning and that kind of thing, right? They're looking for common vulnerabilities, but business logic can introduce its own flavor of vulnerability. And frankly, those are often the scariest and most potentially damaging.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you think about who makes the decision to make APIs public or private, who makes a decision to roll them back? What do you do with APIs that aren't being used that might give a little too much information about what you're exposing within your own infrastructure and business logic
Yeah.
by putting these things out there? How are keys revoked? What do you do when a customer shares their client ID in secret with someone else and you find out about it? How do you manage these type of things? Those are
Right.
all very important things to consider. when it comes to security.
Yeah, and we tend to think of as product developers and owners, like, does the business flow work as intended, right? But what attackers are looking for is how can I make the business flow work as unintended?
Mhm.
And it's that sort of negative scenario. And I give this example of Instagram a lot, where you could request Taylor Swift's, password reset code, which you wouldn't get, and then you could brute force it and take over her. Like, so the logic was perfect. Like, if I forgot my password, this would allow me to reset it. Great, you know, kudos to everybody. But the way it got implemented actually created its own exposure, its own logic flaw, if you will.
Especially if you consider how many, I mean, the technology available out there, you need a certain number of machines to be able to brute force, and you get into quantum mechanics and how fast you're able to get
Exactly.
to expose all of these things. So yeah, it can be very scary.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And when we're big advocates of testing, right? We're like, you should simulate these things, proactively, and find those flaws that might exist. But there's a big challenge there, right? Like, there's a lot of surface to worry about. We've talked about, like, authentication, authorization, data leak, rate limiting, headers, injections, blah 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 blah, right? And we find that most organizations are either doing nothing, or they're brute forcing it. They have a smart, clever engineer, and they say, all right, here, go take, Burp and Zap and start writing these, those are phenomenal tools, but you got to really know what you're doing and have a lot of time, or you're doing the annual pen test or something like that, right? And they show up for a week or two, and they beat on your APIs and give you a report, and then,
No,
disappear.
it needs to be more of a constant part of the culture. Um, I mean, it's all well and good to do these annual security, or whether you're doing regular security audits or you have audit trails and keeping logs of the different API activity, and you're having
Yeah.
someone look into it regularly. But it's not enough to just identify and patch security risks. I think it goes beyond that, but it needs to be a fully involved part of the
Yeah.
CI/CD process.
Well, I mean, you're speaking our language here, and it's actually, I gotta, I'll come back to this in a sec, but I gotta share with everyone. You've probably heard me talk about this a bunch of times, but this is why we do what we do, right? So, we wanted to bring automation to the API testing challenge, and anyone out there can give it a try. This is the whole idea, is to, like, take your documentation, feed it into a tool, have it think of all these different scenarios, and do this continuously in the CI/CD pipeline, and so forth. So, folks, please check it out. We're actually giving away ASCP vouchers. That's $450. If you'll give it a try, kick the tires, and share what you think on LinkedIn. So we really want to get your feedback. We want to make this as great a product as possible. And so there's that. I want to let everyone know that we do have a product management course. It's about 3 hours of content in here. It's launched today. You can go find it on AppySec. You should be able to see it in your accounts if you want to sign up. It's actually 6 different instructors, and it's a collaboration with the Appy Days organization, fabulous group. So you can go learn a whole lot more about this, right? I personally learned a lot just in the last hour from Michaela, as I always do. If you want to pursue this further, maybe this is a career path for you, please come and check it out. I don't know if we've got the course here. There we go. So if you want to go check out the course. And huge thank you to you, Michaela.
It was my pleasure.
I love all that. I love chatting with you every time. I got to see you in Sweden, which was super cool.
Oh yeah, that was a treat.
I really loved it. And thank you, everyone, for all your super interesting comments and questions along the way. As always, we got more great stuff coming. So where the heck? Why do I? Oh, I don't know if we've got Christine. Do we have a call to action on this one, or a link for? Anyways, we'll send out emails and links for this. But in about a month, we're gonna host Teresa. She is absolutely amazing. Um, She's going to be talking about API pen testing, how to get started, and even launch a new course with AppySecU. So really fabulous. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, appysecuniversity.com/December. Easy to remember. Again, Michaela, really appreciate you, all that you do, all right, to share your knowledge with the community. Coming
Yeah, it's
on,
my pleasure.
yeah, and maybe we'll twist your arm to come back again in the future, especially if you got a new blog coming out. We'll do our best to make sure everyone knows about it.
Yeah, I would be honored. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll see you in December. Take care.